welcome back to Tools and Track. Let's build a car. Well, that's perfect, assuming I never want my suspension to move up and down. But I do. Right, as you probably guessed, we are back on the side panels, and this time I'm making all the holes to make sure that everything fits right in the suspension in the front. Seems like a simple task. It's actually going to be a wee bit tricky because we don't just put the holes for the suspension, we've got to get clearance as well. Let me show you. Right, that's most of the holes cleared. Just one more hole to do, which probably seems really obvious when you see it, but I legitimately nearly forgot about this. Well, that's a lot more holes than I thought I was going to have. But the reason for that is I didn't actually think at all about how many holes I was going to need. So, 2 for the upper wishbone, 2 for the lower, 1 great big monster for the shock, and this guy for the steering rack. So that is pretty much it. If I was feeling particularly gallus, I could get the other one down, put them together, template these onto that, and replicate it. And I'm not entirely convinced that that's not going to be what we're going to do. But for the meantime, I'm going to dress these all off so they're not quite so sharp, and then have a wee think about things, probably over a coffee. And then we'll replicate this one over there, and I'll tell you a bit more detail about how we did this, because I'm quite aware that we've just done a montage up until now. After that, handbrake maybe, but yeah, let's get these side panels done. Back to my favourite tool, the belt saber. Well, I think this has the potential to be quite a considerable mistake, because I am banking a lot on that side of my chassis being exactly the same as this side. But to be fair, having orientated my cut lines, now this cut line here is, you know, bang on to this here, and when I notch it up, all the other cut lines kind of line up the way they should do, and these turret lines are more or less correct. And remember, this I have wined out because it wasn't quite right, and that lines up and that lines up, so I think we're alright. I mean, obviously I'm doing this, so it's going to happen, but what we'll do is we'll marker pen in it and we'll cut to the inside of the line, all right? And then I'll show you why we've made the holes the size we have. This is when I scrap a big bit of alley. Right, let's just do it. Right, there's a dry fit for a good demonstration of what you need to consider when you're buggering about in fourth dimensions. This is not bad for a fit, considering I've templated it off the other one, but here's some of the issues we're going to face. So first up, it's not enough to just check that this all fits together. Bear in mind that these arms actually sit inside this tub. It'll mean that the tub needs to clear the arms on all of the range of movements. Now if I was to lift this up, you'll see that's pretty good. There's no chance we're ever going to reach this height when we're on the deck. However, if I was to do full lock, you'll notice that this steering arm all of a sudden changes its projection. Luckily, not too much, but I think we will take a wee tickle off the bottom just to make sure that on the downward stroke, if we ever have complete loss of compression, this will still not fill. On the subject of complete loss of a compression, when I do this, it's not quite as pretty a story. You'll see that the bottom arm here and the bottom arm here are actually touching the chassis. Now, that's pretty much as far out as that would ever go, but it's close. It's just too close for me, and there's always going to be bush flex and various other problems that could creep up and bite me in my bum. So, I think what we'll do is make sure we've got clearance. I know that it's nice to be neat and have everything nice and tight, but I don't want to fail an IVA. And bear in mind that I'm probably going to put trims around here as well, because they are, at the end of the day, a sharp edge. So I'll need to put gap for those trims, which would mean these holes will get smaller. So it's not the end of the world. Had a wee bit of loss. All of this now needs to come back off, and we need to mark up what extra I'm going to take off. You'll probably notice behind me, something has reappeared at the back of the car. As much as I would love to say, yes, we're going to go and finish the rear tub right now, that's just not the case. We'll get to it, I promise, just not just now. But I have put it on because we have changed the dynamic for this. If you remember, many episodes ago, the method for getting this rear tub on in the nick it's in just now is that the bottom cups that hide under the chassis actually have to go through the chassis while we're jiggling it on. We can't do that anymore because the body panels stop that movement. So the reason for me putting on the now is to make sure that I can, because if we've just deleted the only way for that tub to go back on, it's going to mean even more major surgery, because it just can't be done otherwise. We can't take the side panels on to put the tub on, they need to go on first. Right, with me? So, as it stands, if that didn't work, it wouldn't be the end of the world, because just look at this. I know we're going to have to butcher and modify and do stuff to the bottom of this arch to make it sit nice and neat. But I just wanted to prove the concept anyway, because it means that I can still keep these tabs that'll hook underneath and provide a wee bit more extra support. But I will say this, we're not going to town with mad aerodynamics on this. When we do come to do it, I'm probably just going to cut that curve in, probably just following this line down here and refibre it so that it butts straight onto the car. That's going to be the simplest way to do it. But yeah, like I say, this is tomorrow problem. All of what I've just put back on there now needs to come back off again, and we're going to widen those holes out. Once that's done, might get the hoover out, because as you probably guessed, this stuff is messy. So this handbrake is by all accounts an absolute train wreck. I've had a look now for what has been several weeks, but several seconds for you guys, trying to figure some way to sort of adapt this without having to do major surgery, and there isn't. I'm going to have to do major surgery. There's just no way to make this work unless I modify the handbrake itself, which I don't really want to do because it's an OEM part. Let's keep it OEM in case it breaks and I need to replace it. So it's going to have to be the chassis that changes. Now, that quite simply put means I'm going to have to take this out and move it back. But I'm not just going to have to take this out and move it back, because down here there's a 2-bolt support for the front of the handbrake. Now that's also going to need to move back. Right, that's a fucking mess now. Obviously the impending disaster of a grinding disc aside, we've got a solution. So I've got the old part out, but that held the back of the handbrake. What I'm going to do is measure up a new one, because having cut this, it's now too short to just weld back in. So I've got the old tab off, and that'll do fine. We'll just put that on a new section of steel, find a position for it, get the back on. Once the back's on, we can then look at remounting the front again. That's going to be a bit tricky, because having looked at it, we are a good 30 to 40 millimeters further back than we were before. Now that means that a standoff from the pipe we'd used before is probably going to be a bit wobbly. So let's get the back on and we'll have a think about it. Now, that is a bit more realistic. As you can see, it is doing what it should do. Now that's fully slackened off as well, so we've got plenty of adjustment should we need it. The only thing we need to still think about though is that support bracket for the front. Now, I'm going to have to say that we've taken a lot of strength out of this as well, because we just have moving that spar further back has made a big open zone. But the good part about all this is that's as low as the handbrake goes. So if I was to put a spar in across here, I know it's not really going to mesh up with all this, but there's not a lot I can do about it. But if I put a spar kind of close to there, that gives me a jump off to make a bracket that goes from here up, and could probably tie these guys in as well. So let's not reinvent the wheel. That's what we'll do. Okay, so with the handbrake working, that's me taking a wee break and giving myself time to think about what I was doing here. And what I've done is come up with the desire to go and see what other cars do, because this seems like a lot of effort. And I was curious about how the more mass-produced Westfield Caterhams and whatever else get around this, because you know there's quite a bit to this. And the answer is they don't. Their body panels come here. Well, particularly in Westfield's example, they come up to there, the nose goes there, and all of this is exposed. And I thought, that's a bit rank. I wonder how they get away with IVA. Well, that's how they get away with IVA. There's no sharp edges if there's nothing here. However, I've started, so I may as well finish. What I need to do is now just finish up the tidy up in this and make sure that it's good to go. One way I'm going to do that is with this. This is trim edging, and it just presses in around the side of the edge and gives it a nice wee sort of trim to go around it. Clues in the name, I guess. So we'll get that done. However, there's one other part of this that's still giving me a bit of anxiety, and that's this tiny wee flappy bit that goes between the steering and the lower arm. and I reckon that given time, whatever, that's probably going to either crack because it's going to be in a vibraty circumstance and it's quite thin, or it's going to bend and just not look right. So I'm just going to do away with it. I reckon if we widen this hole out completely and trim around the whole lot, it's not really going to make much odds. Remember, if Westfield deem all of this completely unnecessary, what I'm doing is above and beyond the call of trimming. So that's, I reckon, the solution. So I'm going to take all this back off, tidy all this up, put the trim around it, and that'll do us for today, I think. After that, we need to really think what goes on here, don't we? But that's definitely a challenge for another day. So I'm going to wrap up here and say thanks to everyone for jumping along. It's been a while since I've actually worked on this because of Skyline, Supra and everything else, so it probably seems like it's not that long a gap for you. But for me, I'll be honest, the mojo's been dwindling a bit in this because life, everything else, it's just quite hard to get embedded into something when there's a lot of other things going on in your head. But I do promise, 2023, we're going to get this thing running again. So stick with us, because it's going to happen this year, I'm sure of it. Anyway, like, subscribe, bell, I say it every episode, going to just do it. If you want to support a bit more than that, patreon.com/toolsandtrack. It does fund all of this stuff, and it is actually, as you can see, bearing fruit. So, you know, any support you can give, massively appreciated. That's about me. Until next time, guys, drive safe.